So how do you feel?
I think it was quite a stressful conversation. I think I don't feel too bad about it because I know it's not real. So I don't feel as anxious as I would have done if it was a real life conversation. I think I would have come out of that still not feeling great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does everybody else feel?
I was sitting here and I was anxious.
I think you did great.
Yeah.
I think you did very well.
Very well.
I was sitting here feeling anxious and feeling relieved that it wasn't me.
Yeah.
Was that good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought,
And I was catching Rod and Sarah's eye going. It was a nervous titter or two with some of the things that you said, and I was like, oh no. Okay. So, difficult conversation?
Yes.
What, apart from the fact that you anticipated it was going to be challenging anyway, were there particular bits that made it feel, that came up, that made it difficult?
I think there was the repetition of the wanting to offload various things. That was quite tricky. And I think also little things like, isn't it like throwing in, there's only the three of us in our department, and little things that obviously in real life you'd know, wouldn't you, who's in your department, and more about those based. And so I felt less able to offer solutions because I didn't really know what was available.
Yeah. I shall note that down then. Okay. So you had some things that you knew that you wanted to talk about. What did you want to talk about, Chris? What was your agenda?
To get rid of as much as I could, really.
Was that apparent?
Yeah.
yeah.
That was the repetition, wasn't it? That was on his list of things to do. Did you feel in control of the conversation?
No, not really. I still felt like, because you were obviously sitting behind your desk with the computer, I still felt that was more like, I felt like I was the trainee in front of the like a supervisor meeting is.
I wondered whether at any given point he was just going to go back to typing.
Yeah.
Well, I did a part.
Did you?
I did.
We did have some visual problems, didn't, in the room,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
where we lost for a couple of seconds, audio and visual.
Near the end, I did start typing on
And
it
then you
again.
kept every now and then we're just looking back at your
Yeah.
work and
Okay. So in terms of the physicality of the space, did it work for both of you, either of you?
I think it would have been better if we could have done it in a place without a desk, so like chairs next to each other, or even across the table with a coffee, like a more without the work distractions and laptop.
Okay. It felt.
Definitely felt good for me. Well, because it meant I could keep you away from me then. I could just throw stuff at you and not have to have that whole communication thing where you sit and you read body language and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's like a physical.
Barrier.
That desk was the
the
physical,
barrier, yeah.
the physical barrier. The computer being sort of the comfort blanket as well. It did really look like and feel like Glenn was on the attack, and you were sort of parrying blows. Did it feel like that from your point of view?
Yeah, some of it, not all of it. Some of it did. Yeah, some of it felt like it was just yeah. I didn't feel like I was the one in control of the conversation.
What did the rest of you think about that?
I think Jenny was mindful of the fact that she's a new consultant, and even though she was happy to help, but I think she knew her limitations as a new consultant, which was really good actually. And I think conversation is usually a two-way thing, so it's hard for you to take control if that person it's difficult. So.
I was saying I felt like also Chris was in control because this is his office, she's coming to his place. But her tone, although he was throwing her away, but still her tone was like really good, professional, up to the point. She kept the tone. She kept, even when he was trying to get distracted, trying to type in or do something else, she put him back to the track. No, this is a situation within the department. We have to think about it. So I felt like he was a difficult conversation, but she did very well. Like she kept pulling him back to the track. We have to be specific. Yeah. Yeah, that's the second thing.
What about sort of the proportions of the relationship here? Did you feel like an equal?
No. So I think, but I think even if it was in the real life situation, I don't think I would feel like an equal still then.
Okay.
Because, you know, if someone that's been your supervisor and has known you, been a consultant for many years and things, I think I still would feel like a junior colleague, even if we were even being both consultants. I think I still wouldn't feel like an equal.
Would that make you feel uncomfortable, or is that something that you just accept?
I think it would depend who it was.
Okay.
Like I think sometimes some people maybe, other people, not as much.
Okay. Any other views on that?
Because of this discrepancy of experience and all, it's no more option for her to offer that I can take off this much of work from you, because she's also new for knowing the fact that only 3 people are here, and she's throwing the opinions that no funding and etc. etc. So she was without much of options on board, but she negotiated that by offering that we can have a meeting and get together and discuss what way to go forward. So I think it's handled well, but with this discrepancy, obviously there's limited options she had to offer.
I quite like the fact that you went at it as a team approach. You didn't. You acknowledged that yes, you were new and you had limitations. You were just getting used to the role, and that you didn't want to drown yourself and be in the same situation that Chris was. But I loved the fact that you didn't almost take it all on your shoulders. You said, look, this is something we need to do as a team. We need to work this out together. And I really liked that, because then otherwise if you take on all his jobs, you're going to be in the same situation as he is. And so I thought that was really well handled.
What I agree. How do other people think they would have reacted in that situation?
If he wasn't gay, I might stop.
But specifically when he's trying to offload those things, and I lost count of the number of times that you said it, and it was almost like a little bit of a joke at the end, wasn't it? Really, sepsis, fancy sepsis? No, I'll give you sepsis. But I'm not sure that I would have been as resolute as you were, and I really admired that you stood your ground and you protected your own space.
I've got a Wales in my head with her mantra, say no to everything for the first year.
So that's really easy. I speak from somebody who wasn't able to do that. It's really easy if it's stuff that you're not interested in, that it's stuff that you don't feel that your skill set suits. But people will offer you stuff that you are interested in, that you do think that you'd be good at, and you go, yeah, I don't want to miss out on this opportunity.
It changes when you're the sixth of the 6 departments. Only when I arrived, there was no, Emma didn't say to me, you can't take stuff. She was like, there you go.
Yeah, there wouldn't even have been a discussion, would there? Because there certainly wasn't for me. It was like, which days do you want to work? Oh, right, so you're going to be working Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and you will be doing the take all of those days.
And I think I probably find it in real life much more difficult, because it's quite easy to say no in a scenario, isn't it? But actually, when it's your colleagues in real life, I think I would find it much harder to.
I was going to say, like, because obviously you're a consultant, is it still, there's like, these are all registrars, when they walk into a department, someone that's in like a clinical lead, would they still kind of go, right, Jenny, you are going to do sepsis lead. I am going to pass this to you. Thank you very much. I'm going to get back to my typing. Or is it a bit more, let's talk about this now?
I think
It's a bit more like the latter, but I'm thinking specifically about sepsis lead that was passed between members of my department. Like, I've done my time, it's yours. That was the discussion, really. Or mug. Or this would be good for your onward applications. You're doing it.
I guess
That's the discussion.
It depends on the relationship between, you know, the colleagues and the personality of the lead as well. It depends on what sort of person they are.
Sure.
I think if they're quite assertive and they're like, you are doing this, and you know, but yeah.
So if they were, so if he just said, if there was no option and he'd not provided any option, said, so I'm really struggling, I'm going to give you all the complaints to deal with, Harry. End of conversation from his point of view. What do you do then? How would you tackle that?
I should refuse it, but in real life scenario, I don't know what I do. I might, you know, I might feel pressured to take it up actually. So,
Yeah. You might feel obliged, depending, or you might go, ha ha ha, don't be ridiculous. This is an artificial situation. Did you feel sorry for him? Did you care about what he was saying?
Yeah.
You feel empathetic?
I felt sorry because you know you had a lot going on, and I think there was a reason for you to be getting to that stage. So yeah, I felt sorry.
I think in my head I was picturing it as a, you know, someone that clearly you've worked, because I was there, your supervisor, you've clearly worked with and actually, you know, got on with, and you know, clearly haven't had concerns about before. So it's not like you're just a horrible person that no one ever liked. I think it's clear that things have changed recently, which makes you more. And then hearing what's gone on, I think you'd be more empathetic in that.
So do you think if you didn't like the person, then it would be easier to say, no, I am not taking that on?
I think maybe in some ways, I think you'd still be empathetic, because I think, you know, so yeah, with unwell partner, difficult kids and stuff, I think it'd be difficult to not be empathetic to some degree with that. I think if it was just that you were being, you know, a bit of an arsehole and to, you know, being horrible to juniors or the more that reasoning, that's a bit different, isn't it?
So do you think your personal feelings towards the person in this case are helpful, or they get in the way, or a bit of both?
Probably a bit of both, I suspect. I think they're probably helpful. I think if you had a more personal relationship, you'd be able to help more, you know, and more understanding as to what's going on, because you'd know them better, and so.
You won't be able to say no to certain things.
That's
You
it.
know,
On the other hand, you won't be
I'm
able
not
to
sure.
say no
I'm
at
not
all.
sure. I think you've got. I think it would still be. It'd be more hard to say no, but I think you've still got to. I don't know, protect yourself and.
But in real life, you would
your
accept it,
balance.
some of the task that he's going
Yeah, I
to.
think you probably would end up
Yeah.
accepting.
Well, I mean, for example,
something.
if either of you come to me tomorrow and say, "Can you do this?" I wouldn't say no.
Take notes.
No.
What would you say yes to, Harry?
So yeah, I mean that's a fact. So I think that plays a role.
I mean, I think so from my personal experience, that sometimes a strong personal relationship with people does get in the way. I've 100% taken on stuff that I really shouldn't have done because I wanted to make them feel better. I wanted to ease their burden, their suffering at that time. But then I go home and go, what am I going to do? And if I didn't care for them on a personal level, then I think I would have felt better about saying, I can't do that. We need to, and use your strategy, we need to look at this as a whole team. This is not a you problem, it's not a me problem, this is a whole team problem. And we need to work it out. We may need to get our managers involved in that kind of thing. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah. Do you feel though, with everything that's going on in my private life and work life, that I'm justified with how I treated those students?
No, so I think it was more. You can
Like
see
if-
how you got to that point, but I think I think as the conversation went on, I think it would be a case you'd have to go back and kind of, well, make a conversation about going back to those individuals and just having, you know, an apology for how you spoke to them. Because you said, you know, I didn't mean to speak to them in that sort of way, and just like a bit of a reflection.
It was such a difficult conversation because I think when you went into that, you had ideas that you'd hope that by the end of it, the outcomes would have been, we're going to fix your upsetness, we're going to sort the department, we've got an apology to the trainers. But then it was such a difficult conversation, you had to ride back on those outcomes, and what you held on to was, I want to have a meeting as a department to discuss these issues and work it out together. And I think that was the best you could have hoped for, because it was such a, he was so not amenable to. It's interesting. He said, "You're not listening to me," but it's obviously the other way around. And so you have to, you can't plan for every eventuality. You have to go in there and say, well, you've got this goal, and then as the conversation progresses, you need to moderate it to something that's realistic. And I think you did that really well. You were like, all I'm going to get out of this realistically is that I've said some of the problems, and now we're going to have a further meeting as a department to try and come up with solutions. Gives you time to go away and have a think about it, and perhaps some of that will stick in time, maybe, and then you might be more open to a conversation later.
Well, I think that I felt that you got more out of it than that. I felt that you repeatedly attempted to sort of bring in the sort of well-being concerns that you had, and they were sort of, I felt that you picked up on cues, all sort of chinks of light quite well, but that he just rebuffed all of them. What do other people think about how Jenny tackled that? How might you have done it?
Probably I would have done a lot worse than I'm just. Chris needs some serious help.
Do you know what, Mustafa?
Yeah.
I felt Jenny did a really good job because I was trying to find reasons to start shouting at her. I seriously was trying to get really upset with her and just say, look, you are not listening to me. You are just stupid yourself. Why don't you just leave the office? But because she was so calm and that, I couldn't do that.
I think you were able to maintain that posture, calm.
You know, I did try at one point to get a bit angsty with her. I know my wording was there, but I actually wanted to not physically, but
Jesus!
but like physically get out to like lean forward and have that body gesture where it's like, you are just not listening to me, just get out of the office. That's why I wanted to, that was my goal in my head. Obviously that wouldn't be my goal as Chris, but that was my goal. What I wanted to do was send her out of the office, but because you were so good, Jenny, I found that really difficult to do. And that's then when I had to go back to typing to kind of go, right, what am I going to do? What am I going to do next to try and get you to react to something so then I could have a go.
And I think it comes back to what we said in the first scenario, is that you kept a hold of whatever emotions that you were feeling, and you just seemed to sort of glide through it. You didn't raise your voice. It was very measured. You know, you didn't start sort of gabbling, visibly sweating, you know, shaking, etc. Because it would be so easy to do that. I mean, when he said, "You're not listening to me," I kind of went, you know, I was ready to go, "Oh, no, I thought you did that. I thought you did that really, really well. And another thing was that there were periods where there was silence, and sometimes that feels really uncomfortable, but actually it sort of felt natural. And you started talking again at the end. It wasn't like you went, "Oh, I need to say something else now. I need to ram this home." There was space. Did she make you say more than you wanted to?
Absolutely not. No, as I say, what I wanted to do was get to a point where I could just tell you to leave the room. You know, you're just annoying me, you're not listening to me, you might as well not be here, get out. But actually, because you were so calm and you were empathetic and we were talking about things, even though we weren't talking, you know, sometimes it was quite quiet. I found it very difficult to be angry with you and annoyed with you, even though I wanted to be. So I think you did very, very well.
You mentioned time off. How did her suggestion of time off sit with you?
Absolutely not. Because we all know that, and that's the thing, isn't it? When you've got a small department anyway, and you are understaffed, how can you physically have time off? In our heads, if you're a conscientious person, you know, for work, you're not going to want to do that. You're not going to want to have time off, or I wouldn't want to have time off if I'm going to leave the rest of my staff in the stuck, really. So from my perspective, there was no way that I wanted to time off. All I wanted to do was have some more time to be able to do all the stuff that was stacking up on my thing. And that's why I was trying to get rid of the complaints and the sepsis.
What sort of time off do you think she was offering?
Well, first of all, it was to have some time off, and then it was, you said, about having one or 2 days off a week to kind of do that. But then that's why then I mentioned, well, if I have time off, all the emails are going to stack up, it's going to add more to my pressure, etc. We all know what it's like when we go on annual leave.
Yeah.
You'll find it when you become a consultant, or, you know, I'm a manager, Claire's a manager, you go off for a week, you come back, your list is like this, okay? And you kind of go, say you're going to go back on the Monday, on the Sunday you're already thinking, oh, well, now the emails I've got in my email box to do. Is that not right?
Yeah.
Is that not right?
I think what I was started thinking as well, that was, you know, sometimes if you, whether how far you got towards breaking point a little bit as well, because I think sometimes if you got to, you know, do you think you need some time off, someone might then almost like break it down and be like, that's it, actually, I physically just need to forget about everything and be off, or like that was all the response you had, it was more absolutely not, I can't. But it's a little bit about how far things were.
Do you think that Chris would have benefited from time off?
I think so. I think it, from the scenario, it sounded like actually you needed a bit of a break from everything. You
I
know,
think so,
to go and
personally as
focus
well.
on home
Because
life.
you don't want to get to a point where, you know, you're stretching things to the maximum, where it's getting to a point where it's not repairable. So I think, you know.
And also, like in terms of, you mentioned your wife was ill, you know, you didn't want to get into detail about what was actually wrong, you know, whether it's something that you physically do need to be off to support, you know, or something, you know, different.
I liked the fact that you gave an alternative though. You also talked about whether you could give you time away from the ward so that you could concentrate on them admin tasks and have time away from the ward because you completely closed it down when you said time off. And you sort of gave other options of giving time back and reducing stress rather than just, yes, you must go off. There was a way of streamlining the workload so that it put less pressure on you as well.
There is a risk involved in that, though, and it's a risk to you because who's going to be picking up that work? And so that, I mean, that's also really tricky because, I mean, you can talk about recruitment, you can talk about getting locums in, but the reality is it's probably not going to happen in the immediate short term. If he decides that actually I need a week off from the ward starting now, and I'm meant to be on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. That's the reality. I mean, what sort of time off, apart from that alternative time off the ward, time to focus on the admin, what sort of time off would you be suggesting? Annual leave?
Yeah,
Well, I was thinking
it
more
takes
like getting signed off by the GP for, you know,
Sick.
for sick, early on sick.
I would have thought so, yeah.
Okay.
It's
So-
the same if annual leave or sick days. Anyway, he's aware of the department.
He's not there, but it has different implications, though, doesn't it? So, if I'd said, Chris, what would you feel about me signing you off sick?
No,
Why would you have said no?
because there's all this stress. I'm not sick. What's wrong with me? Look at me. Don't look at me like
No. So, do you think he would have acknowledged that? Do you think he's acknowledged that we're getting to crisis point?
No, and I think that's why I didn't push it further with that, because you clearly shut that down, and I didn't think pushing that was the right way to go at that time. I mean, maybe the right thing in the end, but I think it wasn't the right way to go at that conversation.
How would everybody feel if somebody came to them and said, I think you probably need a time off, sick, signed off?
I wouldn't like it. So.
You wouldn't like it?
Yeah.
But I think it would depend. It
Quite
would very much. It would
difficult to
really
hear, isn't it?
depend who it was, wouldn't it? Though. Like,
Of course.
you know,
I think
but it
you,
would be very it would be difficult now. Yeah.
you worked up to that though, because you talked about, I've worked with you for, you know, you were my supervisor, I've worked with you, and personally, and as a team, we're worried about you. And you worked up to that, rather than just going, I think you need to go off sick. You almost showed that you were why you were concerned and what the areas were that were causing you to be worried, and that there'd been a change in the behaviour that you'd seen personally, and obviously the ward sister had said as well. And so it sort of padded it out a little bit, which you still would have probably shut it down, but you had rationale for why you were thinking about that.
I think that was probably the most powerful bit for me, to show that you actually cared about him on a human level. Personally, I have noticed a difference in you. Some of you may well have had time off sick for a variety of reasons, and I'm not expecting anybody to disclose any reasons there now. I have. I'm not going to disclose the reason. I felt a bit ashamed, because in my eyes, I am Superwoman. I mean, that there is an extraordinary dichotomy in my own psyche, because at times I think I am, and then at other times I think that I'm making all of this up, and I'm an enormous imposter. But I had very legitimate reasons for being off sick, and it was only a short-term sickness, but I felt ashamed. And I know other people who have had time off sick, and they felt ashamed. So even the very act of offering leave it can be a massive thing. Might well have stopped him in the track. Oh my God, she thinks this is serious. Is it serious?
And it's not just the sick that you take now, it follows you. I don't know quite how it works with you guys, but I had hand surgery and was off sick from my last job, and when I applied for this, I then had to go to a meeting with HR to prove why I'd been off sick for so long. I had a justified reason for it, but I almost had to prove myself that I wasn't, so actually saying to somebody, do you need to go off sick, might have implications further on rather than just immediately.
And there is a difference when you feel you're not ready to go back to work, or someone tell you, no, you don't look well, you need to take a sick leave. There is a difference. I think that's, you feel horrible or something.
It could really shake the person's foundations of their own self-image. That could be the most shocking thing that you could have said to them. We didn't get there because he was not in a place to acknowledge that this was a deeper problem than just offloading a sepsis lead job. But it could have been. It could have been. And I find those situations very difficult to deal with.
Ultimately, is it better that a person has, say, 2 weeks off now, than in 4 or 6 weeks' time has a complete and utter breakdown and has to have 6 months off? So when you think about that, that might be a conversation that you can have, but depends on how well you know that person.
Yeah.
You know, rather than saying sick, because like you say, if you're saying to someone, look, you're sick, and you don't feel sick, there's nothing wrong with you, sometimes that can put barriers up as well. Whereas if you say, look, like you said, I've seen a difference in you, maybe you need a break, maybe you need some annual leave. If you take some annual leave, this might help you, Because what you're thinking about is being a bit selfish as a new consultant, is that it's better for them to have 2 weeks off now than it is to have 6 months off in 4 months' time.
I think the problem is as a high-functioning individual, it's hard to accept the fact that we're struggling to cope. But I think that shouldn't be the case.
Because you're a superhero, and you never fail to cope. But that is that not our own self-image?
But I don't know. I find it hard enough if I'm genuinely even got a vomiting bug or anything, to phone in sick. I still feel immense guilt at phoning in sick when I'm physically unable to get to work. So I can imagine it being even harder, for other reasons.
Yeah.
Is that just our view, or is that people's public's view? Because, you know, when COVID was around, they were all calling us heroes. So we all felt amazing, didn't we?
Yeah.
You know, so we thought we were invincible, exactly. And yet we're just as vulnerable as everyone else out there. That's the thing. And in fact, we're probably more vulnerable because we get all these pressures put onto us. You know, emotional, physical, mental. You know, we're getting it from the patients all the time.
Rod?
I was going to give a slightly like alternative viewpoint. Just 'cause I like to do that sometimes. Because for me, Chris is your perfectly played example of the worst type of clinical lead. Because he is refusing in any way to look externally for support. And not only is that going to affect him, it's going to affect the whole department. And I've seen this play out. So his solution for him, and probably for you as a department, is we're going to soldier on and we're going to make this work. There's no suggestion in his mind that we could ask for external help, get other people to support us, the rest of it. This is a department that will collapse. And I agree that it's difficult to get locals, but when you're in a situation like this in your own department, you know, for example, he needs to give up sepsis. He needs to give up. It doesn't need to, you don't always take stuff off each other. This is a situation where you need to be saying, do we need to be doing this? We need as a department to look at stuff that we're not going to do. Because clearly this is really difficult for you and it's going to be really difficult for us. And even if you can't get a local, you're going to be asking about saying that this is not a sustainable situation. So be very, Chris as a departmental lead is your like red light. I work for one, not in this hospital, and this is a department that collapses because every solution is we will take it on, and we will, you know, there's no playbook, we will manage it, and this is a disaster. So these are the red flag leads for you to like avoid like the plague and manage, because they need to look externally. They need to not take everything internally and be like, what's wrong? Because he's going to collapse himself, and then you in about a year's time, because you will be sepsis lead, clinical lead, managing the ward as well. So it's whilst it's very difficult to get external help, you should always ask for it if it's true, because otherwise the managers will not see what they're not told about as well. Hematology department collapsed. Same thing. My acute medicine department collapsed. Exactly this.
Not my acute medicine department.
This is why the departments collapse. Is because people think they're going to just keep going.
And to a certain extent, that is because people don't know the process of doing things. As trainees, you think that the managers will see issues and intervene.
Evidence.
But they don't.
You know.
And what you might think is obvious about the inner workings of your department might not be obvious to other people at all. Well, this needs doing, so we'll take it on. And, you know, well, the patients, those group of patients are suffering, so we'll take that on. And suddenly you end up with a ward of patients in ED under your care, for an example.
Yeah.
Chris is the guy who will be out volunteering in the afternoon to say, there'll be like, there's 8 people still to see acting, and be like, all right, well, I guess I better do it. Is that what he'll do next, isn't it? You know, well.
Just take it on.
He'll be like, well, no one else can, it's all on me. You know? And it's the other solution.
And again, that's a little bit about, you know, sort of self-image. You know, I am the superhero. I can do this. The patient is at the heart of it. I am very patient focused. That's the core of my being. I will do that. You know, kids can just wait on the curb for another 5 minutes.
Plaster on a gaping wound, isn't it? You know.
And yet the thing is that we will go away from today, and I will make all of these mistakes repeatedly. Probably even within half an hour of leaving. This has been a lovely academic exercise.
It's because you're a mug.
Yeah. It's written across my forehead too. So, Jenny, you very eloquently suggested that you were going to plan another meeting. Was there anything else that that anybody might want to do after this discussion? Or anything else that people might have thought during the course of discussion that they might be doing as an action plan?
Sit with other colleagues and try.
Yeah, because he said that he'd spoken in depth to the other colleagues in the department, so I think I would probably then have a chat with them on their own as well about what's going on.
Yeah. Okay.
I probably think about occupational occupational health, because you probably aren't in a place to accept to consent to a referral, but it would. There's all sort of help there as well, isn't there? That sometimes talking to somebody that's not in the team is really helpful.
So that might be something that you think about at the at another point.
And also we had feedback the sister that we had a conversation and we are going to have a meeting, otherwise he will escalate it further without waiting. We are getting
Yeah. So do we feel that we resolved the issues on the ward, the issues with that trainee? So what are we going to do about that then?
I think I would potentially reach out to the trainee involved, and obviously not disclose the information, but just say I've heard there's been an incident. Get their side of the point of view from it, and just say I'm aware of it and we are looking into it. And please come to me if anything else is happening, just so they feel that it's been heard and being looked at, not just ignored.
Just that trainee?
Or maybe even like probably that trainee individually.
Yeah.
Because there's been an incident. Maybe then just for all the trainees on the ward as just as a little catch up, informal catch up as how we're all doing. Feel free to come to me if there's any issues.
Just the medical team?
Yeah.
Well, the ward sister, I think you'd feed back to, and then ask her to probably catch up with the nursing team as well. So rather than taking it all on yourself, let her do the nursing team.
So this might be sort of an opportunity to talk about sort of health and well-being and looking out for each other, but also acceptable communication. You might mention civility saves lives and bring that in as well, because anybody could be in this situation, and Chris has given us a very good example of how personal pressures can also affect how you are working as well, and we don't, unless you're on my ward, maybe Rod's ward, we don't talk about this with our trainees, do we?
No.
So how do we expect them to understand it when they become more senior and they're in this position? I mean, that's why I fundamentally believe that we all need to talk about non-technical skills, human factors, how difficult it is emotionally and physically to do our jobs, because I feel that that's a true reflection of reality. It's not just learning how to manage delirium.
Because how did you guys feel when I started having a slight go at her? You were saying at one point you were like, ooh, ew,
I was like, oh.
But you're sat in this room. Just imagine if you were actually.
I felt sorry for you in the first place, but I thought there's too much ego which was stopping you from.
What are you trying to say? But can you imagine being in a workplace, like if I was on the ward and I was speaking to Jenny like that, how would that make you feel then? Like you're cringing, and what you're talking about, civility saves lives. I think it's something like, is it 80%?
60% decrease their cognitive ability.
Is that for the person?
Mm-hmm.
And then for the surrounding people,
It's 20%.
it's 20%. So your working capacity goes down. Okay. And that's the thing, it is a big thing about civility saves lives, because, I'm a big believer in that. You shouldn't be shouting at people. You shouldn't be arguing with people in places, really, because what that does is it doesn't only affect your relationship, it affects everything else around them as well. Okay.
Any final thoughts about that discussion?
I keep going back to that whirlpool on your presentation, that you were in that whirlpool.
Yeah.
Chris was in that whirlpool, and he needed like a ladder from his team to help him recognise he was in a whirlpool. This time my brain works. And climb out.
Yeah.
I thought that's a really good analogy of
I
There-
liked that picture.
There's a beautiful TED talk by somebody called Brene Brown, which is about sympathy versus empathy, and there is literally a cartoon of a ladder into a hole with a bear at the bottom, struggling, and somebody sticking their head down, but not actually going down the ladder to be with them. But I would say that this one, we've talked again about sort of communication styles and that kind of thing, but also, you know, his agenda versus your agenda, making sure that you don't give too much away, if you like, or take too much on, which would be to your detriment. And I thought that you handled it really nicely. So I think we'll call lunch there.